some practical experience as well as, well, let's call it observational experience, so that I can help you get some better results. So what are we going to be doing today? Well, I want to talk about the need for change, and I want to talk about reactions to change. And that's really, really important. And then the 3-step change management process, capping it right off. Now, those are the 3 overviews, if you like, the 3 main things. But along the way, if you have questions, please send them in. There's a chat box that you've got an opportunity to send questions, and I will then, maybe not immediately, but soon after, when it's appropriate, I'll answer the questions that you send to me. Now, at the end of the presentation, I will open up the session for questions from you all. So you decide, questions along the way, and I'm happy to take questions along the way, or questions at the end of the session, and I'll tell you then when we're going to do those questions. Okay, so the need for change. Oh my gosh, change is constant. Where would we be without change? By the way, why did I highlight the word, are we changing again? Why did I italicize that at the end of that phrase? Because so many people say, oh my gosh, again, another change. We had one last year. We had one 5 years ago. Why are we changing? Well, change is constant. And where would we be without change? Where? It's constant. You know, in the UAE, which of course is where I live, in the time that I've been here, I've seen constant change. It's all around us. We live in a change environment. And the changes that have occurred in this country, the UAE, since its federation, since its inception, have been huge, significant. And there's been a great leap forward in so many ways. And I know that if you're here, you're part of this, but there can still be resistance. I mentioned here that the pandemic has highlighted the need for change. In so many ways, we had to adapt when the pandemic hit us last year. Back in March or February even last year, what were we thinking about this COVID-19 and what's this all about? And I will confess that maybe I'm like you, I don't know, but I thought we would probably be over that in about a couple of months. No way, no way. And we're still unsure of when we'll be through this. One of the things that has occurred because of COVID-19 and its effect on us is that we've really been changing and adapting every day. The first part was, well, we've got to wear masks. What? I don't like that. Yeah, we've got to wear masks. We've got to socially distance. Then we have to work from home. What? I don't like working from home. But change was forced upon us. And it's, as a result of what's happened during this 18-month period, change in so many ways in business has been significant, huge. It has had to be. And the organisations that were adept at change, that is easily able to make the change, have survived and thrived, have improved, because they have had what I call a change culture. But you know, we are hearing new things about the pandemic every day. We're hearing words that we hadn't heard before. We've had to become used to doing things that we weren't used to doing before. And they've become constant, but they've also had to be fairly much implemented straight away because of the urgency of overcoming the issues with the virus, with the pandemic. So here's the thing. Change is constant. Even you were not the same person you were 6 months ago. What? My wife thinks I'm the same. She wants me to change. You were not the same person. Mentally and emotionally, there have been changes. You've learned things, apart from the pandemic, but you've learned things in the past 6 months. Things have been different. They will continue that way. And here's another little thing that not a lot of people know, but physically you have changed as well. Well, during the pandemic, I ate a little bit more than I should have. I've put on a bit more weight. I didn't exercise as much. Yeah, well, I'm not quite referring to that, but this is a physiological statement. The body and the way it works is that the cells replicate and replace all the time. We know that the body cells die. They are normal, natural parts of what we are. And the body cells die and replicate and reproduce, and we have new body cells. I would like a few more new body cells. They're getting a little bit older. But the point is, we change physically as well as emotionally. This is about change is constant, happens all the time. Change is at the core, or should be, of every business. Business in the UAE is changing rapidly as a result of change. Rapidly. No, Sheikh Mohammed says we need to be the best at this and at that. And so change is encouraged here. Change is being pushed. As I said a moment ago, I've been in the UAE for 12 years. And in the time that I've been here, I have seen significant change. It's daily happening. And business is changing rapidly. Businesses which don't change will not survive. Really? Why can't they keep doing the same things? They've been successful. Well, let me give you a couple of examples when I say businesses need to change. Oh, there's a little logo which I would be sure you have seen before. This is one of the most recognizable logos around the world, or at least it was. I guess I would put Kodak up there with Coca-Cola as the two most recognizable, over a period of time, logos or brands globally. So years ago, perhaps not too many years ago, Kodak logos were on every shop centre. There were, if you go to the corner, if there were a group of shops in a small area, there would be a Kodak sign. We went to the mall, there's Kodak. Kodak seemed to be everywhere. Then what happened? No Kodak? Yeah, Kodak didn't change. So why didn't they change? Well, here's the story. We all now have digital photography. It's on your mobile phone for a start. And we take selfies, we take photos of all sorts of things that are happening to us in our daily life. They're everywhere. But why did Kodak fail? Well, here's the story. Usually I ask people who invented digital photography. So I'm going about this in the reverse way. And I'll tell you, Kodak developed the process of digital photography. They registered the trademark, the process so that nobody else could copy it. We own the copyright to that. You can't copy it. Well, how come? Well, what happened was that the senior management of Kodak says, no, we produce photographic film. We produce photographic paper. We produce the chemicals. And what we want people to do is to go to their shop and buy a little canister that put in their camera with the film on it. They take lots of photos and they make lots of mistakes in the photos. They take them off to the local store and the local store produces the photographs and they pay us. And then they buy, because most of the photos are probably not very good or out of focus. But they pay for that anyway. You had to pay for a bad photo that you took. And then you buy another little canister and you put on your camera and the process is repeated. Kodak management is saying, that's our business. That's what we do. We don't want this digital stuff. How can we make money if it's digital? Sell the patent. They did at a low price. Kodak nearly went out of business. They nearly did because they were not prepared for what should have been happening. They had the great opportunity and they virtually gave it away. Kodak is still operating now, and what they're doing is working in the R&D area solely. They are developing new concepts, new technologies, new ideas, and they're selling them at a much better price because they've got the expertise, but they are shrunk down to from what they used to be. That's the Kodak story. They didn't change. They didn't adapt. Oh, look, it's bouncing in right now. Blockbuster. You remember in the days when we wanted to watch a video, a movie, so we would go to the Blockbuster store and we would borrow the VHS of the latest movie. You might even borrow and pay for the hire for 2 or 3 of them or more. We'd take them home, we'd watch them. Blockbuster then got the idea of mailing them to you so that you could have these videos sent to your home. Where is Blockbuster now? They were huge, particularly in the United States. Blockbuster was huge. Another little cheeky company came along and said, why don't we do things together? Because we've got some great ideas as to how we could operate. No, we don't want to do that. We want to stay doing what we're doing. So what was this little cheeky company? It was a company called Netflix. We all know Netflix. So Netflix wanted to partner with Blockbuster, and Blockbuster said no. Netflix is now surviving and thriving. Blockbuster is out of business. Here's another little thing about the success of Netflix. About 5 years ago, the film producer and director Steven Spielberg said, oh, Netflix, we shouldn't be supporting Netflix. How can we win an Oscar with a program that's produced, or a film that's produced for Netflix? He didn't want to have anything to do with it. And yet in the last couple of months, Steven Spielberg has signed an agreement to produce movies for Netflix. Things change. Things change. We've got to be ready for those changes. And there are 2 companies here which were not ready for the change and they went out of business. Of course, there are many more, but these 2 were significant companies. There are others that don't change, and we need to be aware of that change. Here's another example. Oh, some of you may not even know what that is. It is so old. Oh my gosh, a telephone which was connected to the wall. And then we got a red one, and it was other colours as well, and they changed the style and they kind of improved things. And then we got this. Remember these? We used to call them bricks because they were so heavy. These were the first mobile phones. They weren't very mobile because they were heavy. We had those, and we thought, this is wonderful technology. My gosh, we can carry the phone with us. Then we had another style of phone. This is moving forward. It's getting lighter and easier to carry. We thought these were pretty smart. And then we had this one, BlackBerry. So the one on the left of the screen, I'm pretty sure that is a Nokia. The one on the right, it's a BlackBerry. Both of those companies did not adapt, did not change, because a gentleman came along by the name of Steve Jobs and said, I've got another idea. We're going to make a phone that's capable of so many more things. And we might even call it a smartphone. So when the iPhone came along, it transformed the way we carry telephones, which we used to call phones, with us. BlackBerry went out of business. Nokia is trying to make a change, struggling. They didn't adapt. And we need to be aware of this. We need to be able to change and move forward. Constant, daily. Change should be implemented when there is a clear need or benefit in organisations. We need to identify the change that should be delivering results for us, but they can happen daily. So the most effective change organisations have a change culture. So what do I mean by a change culture? Well, this is where change as a concept is discussed regularly. This is where staff at all levels are encouraged to come up with new ideas of improving the way we're doing business, to improve the processes which the organisation has. So I even encourage organisations, and particularly teams, to talk about where we are moving, how things are changing, and what sort of things could we do to improve what we're doing now. This is a change culture. It's where all the staff accept that change is normal, natural. Now, I know a company here in Dubai where the CEO said, we wanted to make some significant changes, but he said, and it was an organisational restructure, He said what we already had in place was every month the senior executives would have an away day where they would talk about looking for change all the time. And he said, so when we then implemented the change that was fairly significant in terms of the organisational structure, it just flowed so easily because they had instituted a change culture where people talked about change, talked about new ideas, talked about the future, the vision of where we are going and what that vision will look like and what we need to do to get that vision in place. And the next point here for organisations is that they need to follow a change management process when there is a clear need or benefit. We don't just say, well, we're going to change these things. There is a process. I'm going to share a simple process with you later on in this presentation. When I say simple, of course, we can go into much more detail in some of these larger organisational changes, but overall, the three-step process that I'll show you applies in each case. Not all change is good. Not all change is necessary. These are what I call the truisms of change. So sometimes someone might come up with an idea and say, we need to change this, but it may not be a good change. And not all change is necessary. We might be able to continue the way we're going until at a later stage when we review that option to consider it again and see whether it still is applicable. So I'm not one who says we should always just be changing for the sake of change. Change needs to be something that's going to bring benefits to the organisation. As I said, not all change is necessary. Change shouldn't be made without reason. Shouldn't. We need to be clear about why we're making the change. We need to ask questions about the need for the change. When I say ask questions, I'm not saying that we should be in a defensive mode when we're asking those questions. By defensive, I mean, well, why should we change? That's a good, why do you want to change that? That's a defensive vocalisation. But we should challenge the suggestion of change in a way that has everybody thinking about the reasons for the change and to think about maybe a better strategy, not a negative question, not a defensiveness, but to say, well, can we make it even better than that? And what reasons will there be for the change? Some people are excited about change. Many feel threatened, fearful, and they may actively resist. So let me come back to the excited. It reminds me, and that's probably one of the reasons why I put this in here. A few years ago here, when I was working with a large organisation, a fairly large organisation, and I was doing a leadership program for their senior team. The senior team consisted of about 40 executives overall, to the top two levels. And when I was midway through this program that went for a number of sessions, there was an announcement that this organisation was being merged with another organisation here in the UAE. The news was just a couple of days old when I was with this particular team of senior people. And I asked them, how do you feel about this change that's going to happen? It's a significant change. It is a merger. So how do you feel about this? And of the 20 or so people in the session at that time, one person said, I am excited by this because all sorts of good things can happen. Others, and these were senior people, were feeling a little uncertain about what might happen. And they were even fearful a little bit. I don't know that they actively resisted. Now, when I say this and when I share this example with you, it was really only a couple of days old. The news is only a couple of days old. But there's one element to this announcement, which I'll come to later, that may have caused some people to not be as excited as this one person was. And she was excited. She thought, this is going to be great. So how do you react to change? Do you feel excited at the possibilities and the outcomes? Because sometimes with change, there comes uncertainty. There comes newness. We're doing things a different way, perhaps. So how do you feel? Often people are in their comfort zone I just like things the way they are. I like my comfortable chair. I like the view that I've got. I like the work that I do. I like the people that I'm working with. I don't want to change. Why do I need to change? Yeah. But I want you to think through this process. But if you're driving change, I want you to help people, and I'll talk about this later, have a different and more positive attitude about the possibilities. And I'll share that with you in a little while. Here are some possible reactions. People are excited. People are happy. They're not excited. The next one is, oh, they're so-so. It's going to happen. Oh, I'm okay. I don't mind. Then there is another one that might be, I just accept it. That's what I've got to do. Then people may be reluctant. I'd rather not. Oh, okay, I'll just have to go along. I'd rather not. Then there might be the avoiding. The people will not talk about it. They will avoid any discussion about the change. For them, it's as if it's not going to happen. I'll put it off till another day. I don't care. Then there are the people who are resistant. People who are resistant won't help the process. They will speak negatively about it. And then we get to the smaller percentage, I hope, where some people are angry about the change. Angry. Some people might have been angry when they had to work from home during the pandemic. Oh my gosh, I don't need this. Some people, I'm sure people were resistant. And the last significant one here is sabotage. People may sabotage the change. I hope that that's rare, but I know in the process I'm going to show you we need to resist that totally. So what do I mean by sabotage? Well, sabotage can be subtle. Sabotage can be where people don't do the things that they are asked to do in the change process, that they will put barriers in the way, make things more difficult when they need, even before that, make things more difficult to happen than they need to be. They just really don't want to accept it at all, and they will work almost actively against the change. So here's some reactions set out in a graphic form, and it's kind of got a flow to it. And people will often feel each of these maybe to a smaller or even larger extent. So we have here on the left-hand side the endings. So we're ending the process. We're announcing that we're moving away from the existing process that we have, whatever that process is, and we're moving to new things. So we need to say, yeah, it's going to change. So initially, there can be denial. No, it's not happening. I don't want it to change. No. Okay. Then there can be anger when people reflect on this. But I've been doing this all the time and I hate it. It shouldn't be happening. Maybe this is a reflection on me. Maybe. They take it as anger. Then there can be fear. Fear of the unknown. I don't like things that are different. Now, some people might just have a flash of this. I'm a little bit fearful because I don't know what's going to happen. There might even be shock. Then there might be frustration. Another change process. We did this last year, last month, last week. Frustration. Then there's confusion. Why are we having this? Stress can come into this, and I'll talk about stress in a moment. But also creativity. People can offer suggestions at this point when they're in this neutral zone of moving forward. Skepticism. No, I don't know that it's going to work, really. I don't know that it's worth it. Then we get to acceptance. Yeah, it's a good idea. It's going to be a good thing when this happens. Then we can move to impatience. We want it to happen now. Why can't it be happening now? And there's hope for the future. Then we get to energy about the change, and finally, excitement when we get to the new beginning. Now, for some people, they might be stuck in some of these negatives for a longer period than is suiting or helping the organisation. These are some of the difficulties of change. There's not enough time to change. Not enough time. Let me remind you, we have been through a pandemic, and people did not get 12 months' notice that they are going to have to work from home. They got 1 day of notice from next Sunday. At the end of this week, Thursday, Sunday, you're working from home. What? You didn't have a lot of time to prepare for it. So the idea of there's not enough time can be a bit of a cliche. We don't have time. How much time do you need? Sometimes we do need that little bit of extra time. Sometimes transition takes time. There's stress. When we feel under threat and unable to cope, we feel stress. There are symptoms of stress. There are two different types. The first type is physical stress. And in this situation, we can have a little bit of perspiration. The heart rate can go up. We can get a dry throat. Even heartaches or headaches can occur. I guess it's more headache than heartache. Mental concerns of stress. When we're stressed, we worry. It can lead to depression. Stress can lead to aggression, tension, or even a feeling of failure. And also what can happen as a result of stress is that people's sleep habits can be affected because they're stressed about what's happening. Resistance to change happens when individuals or teams perceive a change to be a threat. So with each of these, particularly the stress and the resistance areas, I'm going to give you a little bit way in the simple change process, a way to ease that and hopefully even avoid that completely. This is what I said before about the human side of change. We have the stages of transition. Moving through those areas, there'll be the ending, the neutral zone, and the new beginning. Now, why am I mentioning this? You see, I'm also a counsellor, and I know that something a little bit larger is at play here when people are concerned about change. Because quite often people can go through the grieving process. We know that when there is grief in place, grief, by the way, can occur not only because a loved one has passed. Grief can occur at losing a job. Grief can occur when there is a significant organisational change. Grief can occur in a range of different activities in our life. And so we know that the grief process has certain stages to it. And those processes or those stages are not necessarily sequential. People can move to one stage and then they might move back again until they move through it completely. So that's a little bit like understanding here that there will be an ending process where people will feel certain things. Then there'll be that neutral zone. And I'll explain a little bit more now when we move to here. The stages of the transition can be the ending is a process of letting go of the old way before beginning the new form or process. In the neutral zone, it's a vacant period between the new beginnings. This is the wilderness, and people can feel a little lost at this stage because they haven't yet caught up with the new beginning. Ending is the process of letting go. Neutral zone is a vacant stage. In the wilderness, people can become lost, angry, they may feel confused, and even overwhelmed. They can also become creative about the changes. And then there is the new beginning. Status quo takes shape, the newness starts to be accepted, and even excitement and anticipation can develop. But how do we move to that quickly? How do we get that going? Well, be aware that people will have different ways of moving forward. Not everyone will adopt change in the same way. We're all different. Some will move fast through the process. Some will backtrack. They'll think it's good, and then the next day they'll go back and think, it's not so good. Some will get stuck in the early stages because they refuse to change. Some will ignore their past experiences and they'll start experimenting first. Some will get confused and locked in as they deal with stressful situations in a diffuse or different way. And I love this quote. We cannot become what we need to be by remaining what we are. Got to move forward. So now let me share with you the 3-stage change management process. Be aware, so what I've taken you through is the emotional or mental and sometimes physical reaction to change. We're going to change. Oh my gosh, I'm stressed already. The very word sends shivers through my body. I don't want to change. When you think about the positive and wonderful changes that we have, that have come about in our lifetime because of change. You know, I mentioned earlier about the change in the UAE. Some years ago here, I did a presentation to one of the ADNOC companies. And one gentleman in the program said, my ambition is to be CEO of this particular company. I said, wow, that's fantastic. He then told me about a significant change that had occurred. He said, my father is illiterate. My father used to travel from Abu Dhabi to Dubai by camel. This is just a short time ago. And now this man has got his qualifications and his aspiration to be CEO of this very large company. Look at the enormous change that's happened in that generation. And I know it's going to happen in the next generations that follow with your children. So why change? Because we want to improve productivity. That's why we want to change. We want to improve performance. We might be adapting to external changes. Sometimes, let's just take the telecommunication industry, because this is coming to you through TDRA. I am still on my phone, it's still 4, right? I haven't got 5, and they're talking about 6 in terms of deliverability. I haven't got 5. But there are changes that are being brought about externally. So Etisalat has to change to deliver the next version of what we're seeing on our phones, because externally it's been set up. In the banking industry, there will be external global changes. So we need to change if we're in a bank because of what's happening globally. So it's those sorts of things. Adapting to external changes. And of course, we need to upgrade systems. The organisation might decide that we're going to overhaul the entire software delivery. Oh my gosh, SaaS, a big area to make changes to. But overall, it's going to deliver great results. But we go through a longish process of change. We've got to know that it's going to deliver results. Here are types of changes taking place within organisations. This is organisational wide versus the subsystem change. Major restructuring, collaboration or right sizing or a change culture, or the reorganisation of a certain department, not organisation wide. Remedial versus developmental. Remedial, because there's a problem, it needs to be remedied, versus developmental. So remedial is improving the poor performance of a product, and developmental is expanding the number of customers served. For example, transformational versus incremental. Transformational is big, sometimes can be quick, versus smaller changes, incremental changes. Change structure and culture from the top down. Continuous improvement as a quality management is the incremental change. I'm sure many of you will have heard of Kaizen, which is the Japanese approach to incremental change. Small change, regularly, really slowly, but making positive changes along the way. And when you do that, you realise in a very short space of time that you will come a long way if you're making incremental changes to the organisation and the way it operates, or your team even. Unplanned versus planned change. The unplanned is major, sudden surprise to the organisation, which causes its members to respond in a highly reactive and disorganised fashion. And then there's the planned change, which occurs with successful implementation of a strategic plan. Often that's not in an organised fashion, although it should be planned. So there are 2 types there, the planned, the unplanned. The unplanned is where the organisation may have had no control over it, but we've had to change. Here's an example. When the airlines were significantly affected by the pandemic, when there was no one flying out of the country, Emirates Airlines had to make major, sudden, surprise changes to deal with this. They had to. And there are other organisations that had to make unplanned changes because of the impact of COVID-19. Let's look now at the 3-stage change management process. Define, communicate, and execute. 3 simple stages. And I see this as the overview to any any complex change process. But of course, as I said earlier, if the changes are complex, if it's a large organisation, there'll be so many more elements to this than I'm going to show you. But overall, these three apply. So let's look at the define stage. We're going to define the need. Why do we need to make the change? Because there's a pandemic and no one's flying on our airline. That's why we need to change. We need to define the objective. Why are we going to change? Explore the options, including the existing processes. Why is this not working as well as we need it to? Okay, should we leave it as it is? Shall we change? Let's look at the options. Then you develop the plan, you prepare a budget, and in this process you develop timelines and milestones. And of course, get the necessary approvals. You need to have the CEO or the managing director, or if necessary, the board to approve the changes. And here's a little caution. I think it's important to confine the change process to the specific need. Sometimes in change process, organisations add on little bits and pieces when it actually can confuse people when they're not really related to the overall objective. So be focused on the objective. That's what we need to change without adding other little things in along the way, okay? So everything's going well. This is the main change. Or why don't we change the entrance to the car park? Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll put that in as well. And then we'll change the way people, no. Confine it to that one change or that large change without adding little bits and pieces. Define the need specifically and who will be affected. Identify who will be affected. Explore the options, including existing processes. Think about what we will keep and the clear reasons why. What do we change? And the clear reasons why we're going to change those. Gather verifiable evidence of the productivity and the performance gains. When I say gather evidence of the changes, the word verifiable is there. So this might mean that you do some external research with other companies that have done a similar change to look at what's going to happen there. Establish timelines and milestones. Set out clearly the stakeholders who will be impacted on by each stage and milestone. Why is that important? I'll answer that question in a moment. Because we're now leading to the second stage, which is communication to all stakeholders, and that is critical. Why? Because if people don't know what's going on, they will become fearful, they'll become resistant, they likely will sabotage. So, develop your communication plan. The communication plan must be open and honest. Who needs to be advised? The plan and objectives should be shared with key stakeholders. Identify the benefits to them. The benefits is really important. Why? Here's a simple thing. People behave, do things and change when they know the benefits to them. And we need to make sure those benefits apply. Here's a little example. When you're buying any product, you personally are after the benefits to you, not the features, the benefits. And it's the same thing here. Use empathy, ta'atuf. Have them understand that you know what they might be, how they might be feeling. Don't just say, well, we're changing, that's it. Accept it and do it. No, understand. This may be difficult for you, but we're going to try and communicate as much as possible to make it easy for you. So understand also how frequent you should communicate this information. So I have a question. How do we know we are monitoring the best KPIs in the organisation in order to change? Good question. Here I think we should talk to the key people involved in establishing those KPIs and align those KPIs as closely as you can to the change that's being put in place. Now, clearly, if someone has KPIs that are not going to be in play when we make the changes, then that's going to have a significant difference. We may have to modify or adjust that person's KPIs if we're making those big changes. Here's a simple example. If someone in Emirates, let's just say it's the sales director who has KPIs that are related to bringing in the sales, and we have a pandemic where the aircraft aren't flying, Clearly, one of his major KPIs is going to change. So we need to look at that and adjust it appropriately so that that person knows that they still have KPIs that then can help the organisation move forward. Communication. This stage is critical to get the buy-in of all who are affected. Open and honest they have to be, because that builds trust, which in turn builds confidence. When I say open and honest, I know a few years ago here there was a major merger of two large organisations. I won't go into which ones, but I know that people have said to me when the merger was announced, everyone was told there will be no attrition. We will not be letting staff go. There will be no redundancies. 2,000 or so redundancies occurred. I may not be getting the figures right, but they were significant. So people were told something right up front that they then found was not correct. Now, I know that circumstances can change and they may need to decide that people should leave because we're reorganising, but be as honest as you can at the time and then communicate things that where there's a change to that. Communication process also focuses on the benefits I keep talking about of the change. What are the benefits of doing this? And when stakeholders know the benefits, they will more easily accept and importantly have buy-in when they know the benefits for them. Here's a little example. You're going to be working from home from Monday. Oh no, I want to keep coming in. Or from Sunday or from Wednesday. You're going to be working from home. No. Well, here's a deal. Here's one little benefit. You won't have to travel to work every morning. That's half an hour you're going to save. And you'll have half an hour at the end of the day. That's an hour every day that you can do other things. Oh, I didn't think of that. Okay. So look at the benefits to people in this situation. But of course, the overall process of having people work remotely has to be managed so that they get the best out of this. I'm just using that as an example, but look for benefits for people. That will help them gain buy-in. So develop your communication plan. 7 keys to communication. Communicate the reasons for the change in the first one. Why are we changing? Well, because the board has told us to. Not a good example. Why are we changing? And as I say, again, be open and honest. Because as soon as there is a feeling of the stakeholders that you're not being honest, you will get resistance when you're trying to make that change. Be honest, be open. Communication should be from the top down. It should be coming from the C-suite. It should be coming ideally from the CEO initially. This is a change that's going to happen. Now, if you're doing a change at a team level, then maybe your divisional director can indicate initially the changes that are happening. Maybe you consider the changes that you're putting in place are not so large. We'll do it as your manager to communicate. Communicate how they will be affected. During this process, these effects will occur for you. Explain the changes step by step so that people are clear on this. Communicate specifically what they need to do. Give them time to absorb the information and always be open to further explanation. And if anything you've told them changes, and it likely will, immediately communicate the change. Now, when I'm talking about the communication, I know that as people, we are strange creatures, right? We can be told something and it kind of goes, whoops, over there, and we don't take it in. So you need to be really careful and really specific about what you're telling people, really specific. I was involved in the relocation of the company that I was with quite some years ago now. And I communicated pretty thoroughly, I thought, when there was one woman who I had identified who was resisting the change. On the day that we had moved everybody in from that department into their offices, and we put everything that they had in their office in exactly the same position as it had been in their previous office, I walked past the workstation of this particular woman and she said to me, "My computer's not working." See, she was still seeing it was difficult. So I looked down on the floor just beside her computer. I then bent down and picked up the plug and plugged it into the power source, and her computer worked. She was in a state of looking for difficulties. She was still, even then, feeling stressed and resisting the change. And I thought we communicated as much as we could. I shouldn't have needed to put in the communication, make sure you plug in your computer. But we got through, we got there. This keys to a successful communication plan: timely and honest. It needs to be timely when things are happening to prevent any confusion, and you need to be honest. Here's the final stage. This stage is driven by the change agent. Execute. This is where we get the work done. Track the progress of the changes. Track the changes that are happening. Manage the timelines. Manage cost. Systems are installed and tested offline first. Anticipate and avoid delay. This is really a project management stage where all those things that are part of the requirement are put in place in the right way. This is the doing stage, the delivery stage. It's driven by the change agent. So what's a change agent? So remember those processes. There might be others that you need to do, but these are the little details that need to be put in place. You know, and I shouldn't be getting down to the point of saying, well, the person who's executing or the people that are executing this need to deliver a weekly report to the person who's in charge, all of those sort of things. You will manage as well so that communication in the team that's executing this get it right. And then the person who's overseeing it, the change agent, will communicate this to the staff overall to make sure that everyone knows what's happening, when it's happening, and the progress. So I talked about the change agent. Every organisational change, large or small, requires one or more change agents. A change agent is anyone who has the skill and power to guide and facilitate the change effort. Change agents may be either external or internal. The success of any change effort depends heavily on the quality and workability of the relationship between the change agent and the key decision makers within the organisation. So again, communication is important. A free flow of honest, open and timely information. Different types of change agents. The one who's just facilitating the process. A change agent could be someone who's designing the change. They can be sharing the information with others by educating, can be inspiring others, or they're a coordinator. But likely those 5 elements are what one change agent may well be doing. Now, if it's a significant change, if it is a merger of 2 companies, then there will be a number of change agents and some will be looking after specific areas. How it can derail the change process, it's a lack of clear vision, a lack of understanding of the roadblocks, ineffective or poor planning, poor, incorrect and confusing communication, stakeholder resistance and even sabotage, which will be fixed up mostly by the effective communication. So it's these 3. It's define, it's communicate, it is execute. 3 stages. Change is constant. So as I said at the start, develop a culture of change. Develop this so that everybody accepts immediately when you think about a change and becomes excited about the possibilities. And when you've got a change culture, people will offer suggestions that you may not have even thought about that will be effective. So the change culture, when I say people will make suggestions, people at all levels will have a view about how things can be improved. So if you're at the top level, don't forget that the people who are at the lower level of the organisation, who are on the front line, will know how they can make some pretty good changes because they're doing it every day. So consider them, get their points of view, get their ideas of how we can effectively make change ongoing for organisations to be better and better all the time. And now I say 2 words. Thank you. Change is happening. It's moving forward. And I hope that I've given you some understanding of the resistance that people might have to change your own reactions to change, and also a simple process of managing change. Following those steps, you'll get some really good results. Right about now, I'm going to say, if you have any questions, I'm open for questions about change management. So if you type them into the chat box, they will be made available for me to give you some answers on change. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a moment to send those questions through to me. So who's the first one coming from? And what is the first question? I'm waiting to see. I'm excited about the changes that might happen when I see the question. Any changes coming? Think about what we've talked about. Think about how change is applied in your life. Changes in my life, huge. Where would we be without the smartphones that we take for granted? Where would we be? Where would we be without delivery of food to our homes at any time of the day or night by a man on a motorbike who's looking at his little smartphone to know where to go and who to deliver it to? Change. That didn't happen a long time ago. We have it now. Any changes coming through? Any questions? I'm waiting. Nobody's got any questions. Well, I'm going to suggest that you, if you like this session, here we go. What is the best traditional practice change? Well, I think that what I've shared with you is pretty good as a traditional practice. You know, when we use the word traditional, that can take us back thousands of years. And of course, over time, there has always been change over the years. And I think at the core always of effective change is communication. If we were to go back 1,000 years or 2,000 years, the elders of the tribe, if we were going to make a change, would be communicating what needed to be done. Always think of communication. Don't operate in a silo. Share with others. Share with them in a timely fashion. Next question. What should we do if we identify a small group or team who seem to be resistant to the change? Good question. So what are we going to do? If there is a team or group that we think are resistant, what I would do is to set up a meeting with the manager of that team and then offer with that manager to have a meeting with the team so we can explain the changes in detail. You can say that to the manager, look, I understand that sometimes people feel resistant because they haven't had the information shared with them. So instead of doing it via email or by another release of information, I would be really happy to come and talk to your team and answer any questions that they have, because I don't want to be seen to be holding any information back. And if they have got some real concerns, they may be concerns that we haven't even addressed. So they might help me by sharing with them the concerns that they have. So why don't we set up a meeting, maybe an hour or so, to talk about what their concerns are, and they might be able to help me as well. How soon should we begin the communication process? Well, I guess as soon as you've decided that you are going to make a change and as soon as you've decided what the objective is. Now, at that point, you may not have developed a plan, but you have a vision of where you're going. You have a vision of what the changes are going to be. You have a vision of what you want it to look like when they're in place, and you're not quite sure yet what's going to be done. So I would suggest that communication to everybody about the vision of the change, what it's going to be like, if you can identify some reasons for the change, and then give them some indication of the timeline. By that, I mean, you may say, I'm going to share some more information with you 2 weeks from now. You may even say, every week we'll send out an email to staff to update them on the progress in this change process. By the way, here's a little suggestion. If you say you're going to send an email out 2 weeks, do it. If you say you're going to send them an update every week, do it. Because if you don't, what will people think? Some people will think he's hiding something. What's going on? He said he was going to send it out every week. He hasn't. What's going on? And they become nervous. They become concerned. If you say you're going to send out an email every week, every 2 weeks, whatever, do it. If you say you're going to keep them up to date, make sure you do. If you say you're going to share the information honestly, do it. If you don't, rumours may start. And those rumours can be difficult to control. So when you're open and honest and address any concerns that people have, you make the entire process a lot smoother. You're going to reduce the likelihood, the possibility of resistance and concern of the people who are involved. So there we go. It's coming up now to 5 minutes to the hour. I've still got some time for more questions if there are any more questions. If you have any questions, please send them through to me. And I'll endeavour to give you the best reply. I think we've slowed down the question process. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this session today. I hope you've got some learning out of it. And once again, I want to say thank you to the people at TDRA who have set this up so that you can gain this information. And I hope that you tell TDRA how pleased you are with what they are offering you. This TDRA Virtual Academy is going to be with us for a while to help you in the learning space because of the changes that have occurred, because of the pandemic. It's still difficult for us, but a lot of good things are going to come out of the process that we've been through because we've had to think about better ways of doing things that were not possible before. We've been forced into change, and we've been forced into delivering some really good things differently than what we used to do before. So change is now constant. Change is what we do. Can I ask you now, are there any more questions? I'm really pleased that you've been with me today, and I hope, as I said, that this has been helpful for you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.